Shadows in the city don't just fall, they consume, swallowing the spires of Astria Prime like forgotten promises. In the grand casino of the universe, Craig always assumed he was the player holding the ace. But as his ship screamed toward the penthouse balcony, smoke trailing like a desperate prayer, he was about to learn that sometimes you're just the card being played. The impact was thunderous, a symphony of shattering glass and tearing metal. Craig rolled from the cockpit, expecting chaos. He found silence. "You're late." Commander Simon stood amidst the pristine wreckage of her home. She didn't flinch, she looked amused. "Guess your intelligence wasn't complete," Craig quipped, leveling his blaster. "I made it this far. And you think that's an accomplishment?" Simon moved with the liquid grace of a predator. "You've entered the wrong house, little assassin." The fight was a blur of violet skin and blue plasma. Craig was fast, a desperate brawler, but Simon was a masterpiece of martial perfection. She disarmed him not with effort, but with disdain. A backhand sent the world spinning into white. Moments later, he was bound to a heavy chair, the cold metal biting into his wrists. "Comfortable?" Simon asked, circling him. "Like a holiday spa," Craig spat blood, grinning through the pain. "Just missing the massage." She leaned in, the floral metallic scent of her skin invading his senses. "You broke into the home of a Dominion commander. You should be dissected by now. Yet, here you sit, human curiosity." She poured a glass of amber liquid, the gesture strangely intimate for an execution. Holding it to his lips, she forced him to drink. The burn was electric. "Moderation is for people with boring stories," Craig murmured, eyes locked on hers. "Nobody remembers the careful ones." "And what will they remember of you?" Simon whispered, straddling his lap, her weight heavy with threat and temptation. "A fool who died in a chair? Depends on the ending." The air between them thickened, charged with a tension that wasn't purely political. It was biological, primal. Craig, fueled by adrenaline and the potent liquor, leaned forward. He didn't calculate. He didn't think. He moved on instinct, capturing her lips. It was a clash of dominance, fierce and unyielding. Simon responded, her composure cracking under the heat. Emboldened, Craig's hand roamed, his fingers tracing a specific ridge along her spine, a touch that would have been a caress on Earth. Simon froze. She tore away, her sword materializing in a hum of lethal energy. "You insolent filth." The rage was incandescent, far beyond the anger of a break-in. It was the fury of a desecrated temple. "You touch the passage, that channel is sacred. It is for bonding, for eternity." Craig blinked, the liquor buzz dying instantly. "I didn't know. On Earth, it's just." "This is not Earth." She pressed the blade to his throat, the hum vibrating through his teeth. "You have initiated a bond no ritual can erase. By our law, you and I are joined. You've tainted my bloodline with your ignorance." Before Craig could process the cosmic irony of accidentally marrying his target, the room blared with a triple tone. "Commander Simon, security sweep. Unauthorized biosignature detected." Minister Coven's voice boomed from the comms. The net was closing. Simon stared at the door, then at Craig. If they found him, she was the commander who let an assassin in. She would be stripped of rank, ruined. "You want to live," she hissed, deactivating her blade. "Then you play the role. You are not an intruder. You are my consort." The doors hissed open. Minister Coven strode in, skepticism etched into his sharp features. "Explain this, Commander." Simon didn't blink. She gripped Craig's arm, a possession that felt like a shackle. "This is my guest, my consort. I have taken a human mate." Coven sneered, looking at Craig as if he were a stain on the floor. "A consort? Without ritual, without witness? Since when does the Dominion question my private affairs?" Simon's voice was ice. "He is mine, by blood and law." Coven retreated, but his eyes promised war. As the doors closed, the reality settled in. They were trapped in a lie that could get them both executed. "Drill me," Craig said, wiping the blood from his lip. "If I'm your husband, you better teach me how not to get us killed." The next 24 hours were a brutal crash course in nobility. But the real test was the gala. The High Hall was a cavern of judgment, filled with the elite who circled like sharks in silk. When Craig and Simon entered, the silence was deafening. Coven waited at the center, a smile playing on his lips like a wound. "Commander," Coven announced, his voice carrying to the rafters. You claim a bond, the Dominion demands proof, show us the sanctity. It was a trap, he expected them to falter. Craig felt Simon stiffen. He leaned in, whispering, "Time for a show, sweetheart." He took her hand and pressed it deliberately over his heart, covering it with his own. He held her gaze, not with submission, but with the reckless defiance that had gotten him this far. "I am hers," Craig announced, his voice steady. "By choice, by act, by bond." Simon didn't pull away. For a fleeting second, the lie felt terrifyingly real. "He speaks truth," she declared, staring Coven down. "The bond is irrevocable." The hall erupted in whispers, but they had bought it. They had survived the stage. But backstage, the knife was waiting. Back in her quarters, the adrenaline crashed. Simon paced, stripping off her ceremonial clasp. "You think this is victory?" Coven knows. He won't stop. "Why?" Craig asked, dropping the act. "Why did he want you dead in the first place?" Simon stopped. "Because I found the proof. Coven is selling Dominion prototypes to human warlords. He hired you to kill me to cover his tracks. And now, thanks to your bond, we are the only two people standing in his way." Craig laughed, a dry, sharp sound. "So, I'm the assassin hired by the villain, married to the hero, and if we lose, everyone dies. Classic. Future uncertain." Predict the outcome in the comments and subscribe for more twists. "We don't wait for him," Simon said, her eyes burning with a new resolve. "We finish this." They hit Coven's private gallery an hour later. It wasn't an infiltration, it was an execution of justice. They moved as a unit, Simon the Blade, Craig the Shadow. When they burst into Coven's sanctum, the minister laughed. "Who will believe you?" Coven sneered, surrounded by guards. The disgraced commander and her pet human. "The truth doesn't need believers," Simon said, revealing the holographic device in her hand. "It just needs an audience." The air shimmered. Coven's confession, recorded moments prior, played on a loop for the high command. The guards turned their weapons on their master. As Coven was dragged away, cursing their names, silence returned to the penthouse. It was over. Simon poured 2 glasses of Vexian fire. She looked at Craig, really looked at him for the first time. The bond was a lie, a mistake, a scandal. And yet, standing in the wreckage of their collision, it felt like the only honest thing in the room. "A chain," she murmured, handing him the glass. "Or a sentence." Craig clinked his glass against hers, that reckless grin softening into something real. "I've had worse sentences. And the company isn't bad. Insolent human. Commander." They drank as the city lights shimmered below, 2 gamblers who had bet everything on a bluff and somehow, against all odds, broke the house.